Hello. Thank you again for logging in. If it's your first time, welcome. Really appreciate you're looking at the video. Today I'm just going to talk about. I've spoken briefly about how to talk to someone who's experienced grief or this kind of stuff. So I just want to mention the stages that the person may be experiencing who's grieving. So grief is obviously a universal emotion. Everyone goes through it at some stage. It's unavoidable. So it's just kind of things what to expect or what to notice in other people, and to ensure that they're going through it safely, I suppose. So if you think about it, you can be stuck in stages of grief, which can become kind of complex grief, and that for that kind of person, they will need some support, and probably more support than the individual can give. So they may need a specialist therapist to be able to help them through this grief. Might not take a great deal of time, but it's just allowing them to move through and process, as in move through the stages that they need to get to. There's a lot of theories out there about grief, and they're all right. I don't think any of them are wrong. I think they're all excellent and they all offer something. But just for the purpose of this, the one that's most commonly used is by a psychiatrist, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And in fairness to the lady, she kind of really made it okay to notice that grief is a normal human process. And that's amazing credit to that person. And then from her seminal work, other people followed, and other people started coming up with their own theories, which are also excellent and very, very interesting. And it really highlights, like, there's different cultural things. So it's not just saying that this is the way you should or you will go through grief, but it's just even to notice that these stages may pop up. And when I'm mentioning grief, we understand grief as in someone dead, someone's after dying, and these are the stages that go through when someone dies. But grief can be anything. Grief can be loss of a job that you loved, that your whole life was dedicated to. You could go through an intense amount of grief if you lost your business and you were unemployed for the first time ever. There's an intense grief there, or marriage broke up. There's huge amounts of grief in different areas. If your family break up and stuff. So grief is not just exclusive to death. And grief is a very, very normal. It's a normal process for everyone to go through. So as I said, I'm just going to use Dr. Kubler-Ross's stages, and she wrote 5 stages when she came out. The book On Death and Dying, if you're interested in this, is excellent. So in On Death and Dying, she wrote the 5 stages of grief, and later on in the research, she realised that maybe there's 2 more. And interestingly, when she wrote On Death and Dying, and when she created the 5 stages of grief, it was immediately adopted by society as when people die. This is when people die. But when she was writing it, she was working with dying patients, and when she was dealing with dying patients, she was watching their stages. So similarly, for someone who's after getting a really negative diagnosis, let's say they've after been diagnosed with cancer or something like that, and they don't have a great prognosis, like there's not a lot of time left, that there's no cure for this cancer, then this is the stages that they're more than likely going to go through. Now, as well as that, when we look at these stages, we're kind of expecting it to go 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D. But interestingly, grief doesn't happen like that. You can fire through all stages very fast, and then they'll come back. Or you can go from A to D to B, and so on. So that shows how unique the individual is. We're so amazing. We're so unique that my experience will determine how I again experience my grief and process my grief, and yours will be completely different. So it's just really to identify what happens. And one of the things that can happen is absolute shock. And I've been in my career, I've been around people who I've had to tell their loved one is dead. And shock is a very, very common thing. So you immediately go in and you'll say to them, I'm very sorry, your husband is dead. We've done everything we can. And we're encouraged to say dead 3 times because it needs to get through that barrier. And interestingly, shock is the barrier. The immediate thing that people can do is numb. Immediate. If you've ever had really bad news, it's like a wave, this wash over you of numbness. That's the overwhelm. That's the absolute rising of all these unbelievably uncontrollable, intense emotions. So we name that shock, not clinical shock that we understand it, just a shock. This is a shock. It's a psychogenic shock, and that could be the very initial. You get the negative news in the doctors, and then all you hear is you don't hear anything after that. And I've heard that so many times from people who have got diagnoses, and they're saying, I didn't hear anything after the diagnosis. After he said, I've 3 weeks to live, I heard nothing else. And that's why as well in medicine now they're encouraging people who are getting a diagnosis to bring some family member, because then the family member, although they will obviously have the shock, it's nowhere close to what the person will experience. So that's the person who's getting it, getting the news. But then the person who's after hearing that the loved one has died, walking in and seeing the loved one has died and just numb, they can't do anything, they're frozen. So then from then, and I'll just go through it in the stages. So denial then can be very real. So denial is incredible. It's an incredible emotion. Denial can actually make you not believe. You could get a terminal diagnosis, be told you have a certain amount of time to live, and your brain goes, nope, not going to do it, and you continue on with what you're doing, and completely oblivious. Your brain will not let you accept that this is really going to happen to you. It's the real world. So the same thing will happen with the person who's after losing a partner, which, you could find people having lived with a body for a certain amount of time, and everyone outside of that will go, oh my God, she was in the house with him for 2 days. That's denial. That's just this absolute, I am not going to accept this. This is denial. And it's quite difficult. It's really, really difficult. Like, you'd see people who drop dead. I've seen a lot of people who have dropped dead, and you'll see the reaction of families. No, come on, get up, come on, talk to me, daddy, talk to me, and all this kind of stuff. That's all the denial. That's the 1 second that person, that beautiful human, that beautiful life was there in front of me talking to me, and the next, they're gone. They don't exist anymore. They're not there. And then you can have anger. And I had an incredible experience a few years ago, and it was very emotional for me at the time. But I arrived to a house where a father and daughter were fighting. It turned out it was a transgender female, and this is what they were fighting about. They were fighting about the father didn't accept the transgender female as female. He accepted this person as their son. But apparently it was a huge row, and they were shouting and screaming at each other, and apparently the transgender female's last words were, I hate you. And the father died, dropped dead immediately, just dropped dead in the ground. Now, there was no way it was anyone's fault, that kind of way. It wasn't that the transgender female killed the father. It was the father was unwell, emotions got elevated, and whatever happened to the father, he was obviously going to die anyway. But the transgender female, when we arrived, was screaming, I'm sorry, daddy, I'm sorry, I'll change. So this is this is the bargaining stage as well. So they're really they really want to be accepted. They really want to be heard, that they want this person back, and I'll do anything for you, daddy. I'll change me. So that they're willing to risk and bargain their own identity to get the other back. And you'll often hear people in a sense that they will bargain with God. If you get me out of this, I'll go to church more, I'll do more for the community, or I'll help people more. But that's what's happening, is you're in the bargaining stage. And then they'll give anger in there as well. So obviously someone who can get a very poor diagnosis, immediately can turn around and just say, no, I'm not listening to this. This is rubbish. You're talking nonsense. I'm out of here. And that's just the absolute, it's also denial, but there's denial manifested as well as anger. And then, the person who's died in front of you, you could scream at them, why are you leaving me? What's happening here? I hate this. Someone do something. I found that you're walking into a situation, it's very heightened emotionally, and everybody's screaming and screaming at you. So I'm just going to continue this. I'm going to do this in 2 parts, and I'll continue this in the next video. Thank you.